Hey folks, David Stewart here. I'd like to talk a little bit today about Luigi's Mansion 3. This is actually a very fun game to play in the cooperative mode, particularly with children. So if you were stuck inside, this is a game that I think maybe you should check out and think about playing with your kids sometime. If you play video games with your kids, I have been playing it with my 4-year-old son. I originally bought this game to go on a plane trip. We went on a rather long plane trip over to Texas for my grandfather's funeral, and I wanted something to do with my son on the plane. We took a couple Lego sets on the plane. Turns out those were the fun thing to do on the plane, was build some Legos, and we didn't end up playing the game until we got back home, and then all of a sudden we're in this, social isolation quarantine mode. Can't really go out and play with the other kids on the playground. It's also been raining a lot, which means we haven't been able to go out and play in the fields or anything like that either. So we've played some Luigi's Mansion. This is a game that I think is great for kids to play cooperatively with an adult. The gameplay doesn't require the amount of dexterity and previously established skills that most platformer games require. Of course, I say that my son really loves to play the Super Mario 3D World game on the Wii U. He's very good at it. He's beaten the game. But when it comes to more complicated platformers, he's at a little bit of a disadvantage because he's young and he also doesn't have the experience. He doesn't know all the previous games in the series and all of the different moves that you may need to do as Mario or some other character to get through the level. Luigi's Mansion, by contrast, is a game that's not about platforming so much as it's about puzzle solving, paying attention to the details in the environment, and of course fighting ghosts. It's like a little Ghostbusters game with Luigi from the Mario games. And most of the gameplay boils down to those two different game levels. You are either solving puzzles or uncovering secrets using your ability to understand the environment and figure out how to manipulate the environment to get past a room or get past a certain door or find a hidden area where there's like a collectible jewel maybe. And then you have the little mini game that is actually physically catching the ghosts. The ghosts are fairly easy to catch. You flash them with a flashlight, you suck them up with a vacuum and smash them around, but it does require some interesting dexterity with the hands. That being said, my 4-year-old son is actually able to catch the ghosts okay, not great, but one of the things that I didn't realize was a big benefit to him is the small size of the Nintendo Joy-Con controllers. They're really too small for someone like me to manipulate, but my son, who has a hard time manipulating, say, a PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 3 controller, those little Joy-Cons are perfect for him. He's able to use the triggers, which you have to use to operate the little vacuum to suck up the ghosts. He's able to use those both, to manipulate the environment and to actually defeat the ghosts. Each of the large levels that you play through also ends with a boss ghost fight that requires quite a bit of pattern recognition and a little bit more dexterity, but this is where that cooperative mode comes in. You can play as Luigi and Gooigi at the same time. If you're playing single player, you can switch between them to solve certain puzzles. Gooigi, who's just this Luigi made of goo, he can go through, say, prison bars or go through sewer grates and solve a bunch of the puzzles. But in the cooperative mode, you hand the second player the controller and they can control Gooigi and do all of the puzzle elements that Gooigi would have to do. And at the same time, it makes the boss fights a little easier. It makes the ghost fights easier because you have a second person there to flash the flashlight or suck up the ghost or manipulate the environment in the various different ways that are required to get past those ghosts. So it lowers the difficulty level of the game a little bit, which is great for kids. The other thing that's great about playing this with kids is that Gooigi has a smaller life bar, but once his life goes out, you can bring him back fairly quickly, which means kids aren't having to deal with the frustration of dying. If they're playing with an adult who's a little bit better at the game, you can kind of help them through those various parts. Now, one interesting thing I found about this cooperative mode is that it works on a couple of different language skill sets with your kid. So you have to give instructions to your child for you to get past certain puzzles, or they have to give instructions to you. If they're trying to figure out how to solve the puzzle, they have to tell you what to do. They have to describe the actions that they want you to take on screen, or they have to receive the instructions that you're giving and be able to then operate the character in the way that you're suggesting. It actually works on a bunch of different little language skills that I didn't anticipate it working on. Things that are important to a kid's learning, which is following instructions as well as giving instructions. Often we don't let kids give enough instructions and describe things enough to other people. We tend to focus solely on kids receiving instructions and then operating with them. But this game is great because it can work on both of those levels, so you get a little bit of extra work done while you're having fun with the game. In general, I found the puzzles to be very appropriate for younger children. And my kid, he's 4. He's a pretty smart 4-year-old. He loves doing stuff like this with puzzles. He's very good at seeing environments and manipulating them and figuring out what's different and those sorts of things. He's very good at observation. But I think for a whole range of kids, being able to look at the rooms and figure out the puzzles, like maybe if we suck up the leaves here, that'll show us something. What if Luigi goes in here? What if you stand here, Dad, and then I do this? There's all kinds of different little puzzle solving things that are here, and all of them seem to be pretty operable by children. So that's a lot of fun to play with. It's a lot of fun to play with your kid when he's figuring out the puzzles. And there's even a couple puzzles that made me think too, and we had to maybe work them out together, and that was a lot of fun too. The platforming sections are very limited. As I said, one of the benefits is that you don't have to be a really skillful platformer. There's a couple of sections where you have to like bounce on mushrooms or swing across a gap with a rope that, they may be a little bit challenging for a kid, but nothing that's really too complicated, I think. And of course, kids really love Mario characters. They're cartoonish, they have big expressions, they're easy for kids to like, to identify with, to understand, to figure out. It has a fun little story where Luigi and Mario and Peach and the Toads, they go to this hotel on a vacation. Turns out the hotel is actually populated by ghosts that are working with King Boo to get their revenge, and the gameplay proceeds by going up different levels of the tower. And each level of the tower you go up, it revolves around beating a boss and getting a button that takes the elevator one floor higher. So my son has had a lot of fun playing through that little story and thinking about why these ghosts are trying to get Luigi. Why are they angry at Luigi and the professor? Why are they trying to get revenge on them? Lots of fun little things that kids can project their imagination into, and we've had a lot of little fun exploring the environments. The environments are highly varied. There's a level that's a movie level. There's a castle level. There's a level that's all garden plants. There's a level that's pretty standard hotel fare. There's all kinds of different levels to explore and play through with this game, and we haven't even gotten through all of them. So I have no idea what is going to be up on the top floors to surprise us. But I think it's a fun experience, and the aesthetics really work for it. It's a game that has a little bit of a spooky atmosphere, but not scary at all for kids. It's a fun atmosphere. It's more like Haunted Mansion at Disneyland, or maybe even much sillier than that. So definitely a fun aesthetic experience for kids and for me as well. The only thing I will say about this game is I'm glad we didn't play it on the plane trip like I had originally planned, because you do have to play pretty far into the game before you unlock Luigi, and you have that cooperative mode available that makes the gameplay so much more fun with your kid. So that's the main downside. There's also a whole host of competitive multiplayer options, or just different ways you can play multiplayer in a couple of other environments like random maps, trying to catch ghosts. Those are fairly fun, but a lot of times they have a timer involved that is a little bit more difficult for kids, and I think we've had the most fun just kind of letting my son explore the levels with me and catch the ghosts and figure out puzzles and have that kind of fun with Dad on a rainy day. So that's it, Luigi's Mansion 3. Very fun game to kill some downtime with your kid on a rainy day, or just because you happen to be stuck inside. I do recommend it, and I've had a lot of fun with it. And I think you don't have to have played any of the earlier games in the series, which I've played going all the way back to whatever the first one was. I think it was on GameCube. You don't have to have played any of those in order to enjoy this game. The mechanics are pretty easy to figure out, including the ghost catching mechanics, and most of it really revolves around hidden object finding and puzzle solving. So thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what you think about this game or anything else that you might recommend for play with kids. I might come up with a couple of just recommended games that I think are fun to play with your kids during this sort of time. A little bit of time to actually spend time bonding with your kids when you can't go outside or go to the park and play football with them, which is what we haven't really been able to do. And that's been kind of tough because my kid loves to run around and we haven't been able to do as much of it lately. So give me some of your suggestions and maybe I'll give them a look, and I'll see you guys next time. Newest book is called The Keys to Prolific Creativity. It's a nonfiction book on how to refine your creative process, up your output, actually complete projects, get things done, and maybe even build your career a little bit. So thanks so much, and I'll see you guys next time.